If you were a citizen of Paris in the spring of 1794, the concept of God was a matter of life and death. For centuries, France had been united under the absolute oneness of the Catholic Church, but the Revolution had shattered that. In the name of reason, where desecrated priests were exiled or executed, and a radical atheism had swept through the city's political clubs. The old unity was dead, placed by a violent and chaotic void. But something curious happened on the 8th of June. On that day, the entire city was commanded to participate in a new kind of holy day, the Festival of the Supreme Being. From every corner of Paris, massive procession of citizens, dressed in their finest and carrying bouquets of flowers and stalks of wheat, marched toward the Tuileries Garden. There an artificial mountain had been built, crowned with a tree of liberty. At the foot of this mountain, a strange ritual unfolded. It was a spectacle of breathtaking scale, meticulously designed by the great artist of the Revolution, Jacques-Louis David. Sounds hopeful, right? A nation, weary of terror and division, coming together under a new benevolent faith. What the cheering crowds didn't know was that they were not witnessing a spiritual awakening. They were participants in one of history's most audacious experiments in social engineering. Behind that pageant of manufactured unity was the most powerful and feared man in France, Maximilien Robespierre, the leader of the Committee of Public Safety. Robespierre, the incorruptible, had discovered something revolutionary. You don't need to simply execute a population into submission. You just need to replace their old god with a new one that serves the state. Drawing directly from the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau's theory of a civil religion, Robespierre sought to create a mandatory deism, a state-sponsored faith, that would turn revolutionary fervor into unshakable civic virtue. Within months, he had turned abstract philosophy into national policy. The quantifiable result was this colossal festival, a powerful symbolic declaration. But more importantly, this marked the birth of something we can call the architecture of state-mandated oneness. What you're about to discover goes far beyond the political schemes of a long-dead revolutionary. We're talking about an invisible architecture of control, a program for manufacturing consensus that operates in layers, so deep within our social reality that its victims not only participate willingly, they fiercely defend the walls of their own prisons. Get ready for a journey through the source code of the self. We'll uncover how entire populations are manipulated to willingly trade their sovereignty for the illusion of safety. Techniques that combine behavioral psychology, algorithmic technology, and esoteric symbolism. This is the anatomy of weaponized oneness. Today, over 2 centuries after Robespierre's failed festival, we live submerged in an infinitely more sophisticated and pervasive version of the same manipulation. Every news feed you scroll, every brand identity you adopt, every wave of political outrage you feel, all are increasingly orchestrated by forces operating just beyond the threshold of our perception. A grand theater of counterfeit unity designed to keep us divided into manageable tribes, each convinced of its own supreme virtue. And most people don't suspect a thing. This isn't speculation. This architecture of control has been openly described by its own architects for nearly a century. When Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, published his seminal book Propaganda in 1928, he wasn't exposing a conspiracy so much as he was writing a user manual. He revealed how this system works as an invisible government, a small group of people who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses and use that knowledge to pull the wires of public opinion. Everything you believe is a free choice, from the brands you trust to the social norms you accept. Carries a hidden layer of information serving the interests of this unseen class of governors. Bernays wrote, and I quote, "We are governed. Our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by this relatively small number of persons. After the birth of the internet, a new, wild frontier of human autonomy emerged. For a brief moment, power was decentralized. But this chaos was intolerable to the systems of control. In her groundbreaking 2019 work, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff documented how the new titans of technology systematically built a new kind of power on an unprecedented scale. People had become too unpredictable, too sovereign in the digital realm. This was a problem for those who profit from predictable behavior, as Zuboff documented. Corporations like Google and Facebook began secretly harvesting the digital exhaust of human experience or clicks, likes, searches, and location data and using it to build prediction products. They have been perfecting this method for over 2 decades, offering us the irresistible incentives of convenience, connection, and free services. In exchange for the raw material of our souls, they don't just want to know our thoughts, they want to automate them. This architecture of control is not a monolithic entity. It is a multi-domain web of influence, with each strand designed to reinforce the others, creating a full-spectrum environment of manufactured reality. Let's examine just 3 of the most powerful domains first. Consider the domain of technology and social media, your personalized feed on Instagram. TikTok or Facebook wasn't just designed to show you things you like. It was a carefully orchestrated environment built for the true purpose of behavioral modification. The controlling entities, the platform algorithms, systematically track your every glance, click, and hesitation to build a predictive model of your personality. Their psychological goal is to maximize your engagement by feeding you a steady diet of content that validates your existing beliefs and stokes your emotional outrage. They provide the intoxicating incentive of social validation, likes, shares, and a sense of belonging to a righteous tribe. But only if they get the one thing they need to survive: your unending stream of attention and data. The result? A society fractured into thousands of digital arcs, each with its own version of reality. These echo chambers create a powerful artificial oneness within the group, while fostering extreme hostility to all outside information, making nuanced public discourse nearly impossible in populations, too easily steerable by those who can master the algorithm. Next, we have the domain of media and entertainment. The 24-hour news cycle and the narratives in our most popular films and television shows aren't just information or escapism. They are the primary tools for constructing a consensus reality. The true psychological goal is to manage the Overton window, the narrow range of ideas the public is allowed to debate and consider legitimate. The controlling entities, a handful of massive media conglomerates, systematically curate the stories we see, the experts we hear from, and the archetypes we admire. They decide who the heroes are and who the villains are. They provide the comforting resource of feeling informed and the powerful incentive of being part of a shared cultural conversation. But the condition is your passive consumption of their narrative framework. The result? A subtle homogenization of thought. A population that unconsciously absorbs the values, fears, and aspirations embedded in its entertainment, creating a powerful, cohesive oneness around a centrally managed version of the world. Finally, and perhaps most insidiously, consider the domain of the modern spirituality and wellness industry. The explosion of yoga brands, meditation apps, and charismatic life coaches wasn't just a response to a growing desire for peace. It was the rapid commodification of enlightenment itself. The true purpose was to take the profound, challenging journey toward non-dual awareness and turn it into a consumer identity. The controlling entities, wellness influencers, and corporations systematically create exclusive communities built around specific jargon and expensive products. They offer the powerful incentive of a prepackaged identity, a feeling of being awakened, high vibration, and superior to the unenlightened masses. But this salvation comes with a price tag and a condition of ideological conformity to the guru or the brand. The result? The very concept of oneness is weaponized. Instead of a path to universal compassion, it becomes another form of tribalism. The difficult internal work is replaced by an external lifestyle, and millions of sincere seekers are sold a counterfeit spirituality that keeps them trapped in the very ego it claims to transcend. Those behind the curtain of modern society have understood something absolutely fundamental about the human mind. Our emotions, our intuitions, and our deep-seated biases are the language of the subconscious. Whoever controls this emotional landscape controls behavior. And here we reach the heart of the matter. Do you really control your own beliefs? Do you consciously choose your loyalties, your outrage, your sense of belonging to one group and not another? The answer, according to decades of research in cognitive science and behavioral economics, is a resounding no. The Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, in his landmark book Thinking, Fast and Slow, demonstrated how our minds are governed by two systems. System 2 is the conscious, rational mind you think of as you. It's slow, deliberate, and requires effort. But the vast majority of our lives are run by System 1, a fast, intuitive, and highly emotional process that makes snap judgments based on mental shortcuts and ingrained biases. It operates automatically, long before our conscious mind is even aware that a decision has been made. The engineers of consent not only know this, they have systematically weaponized it against us. Think about it. How many times have you seen a headline or a short video clip and felt an instantaneous surge of righteous anger or absolute certainty? How many times have you jumped to defend your side in an online argument, feeling a powerful gut-level conviction that you are right and the other side is wrong, or even evil? That wasn't your rational mind concluding a logical argument. That was the system working exactly as designed. Your System 1 was deliberately activated, or manipulated through a cocktail of powerful psychological triggers like confirmation, bias, the effect heuristic, and in-group favoritism, all operating far below the threshold of your conscious awareness, all designed to give you the feeling of certainty without the burden of thought. To activate our unconscious minds and steer our behavior, the architects of control deploy a number of specific, systematic strategies. These are not random acts. They are refined psychological tools designed to create artificial unity and predictable group identity. Let's dissect two of the most effective. The first and most powerful strategy is the manufacturing of sacred victimhood. This technique is a kind of moral battery for group identity. It works by convincing a target population that their core identity is their way of life, their values, their very existences, under constant and malicious attack from a vaguely defined but sinister outgroup. The political narratives that speak of the silent majority betrayed by corrupt elites, the online movements that claim to hold forbidden knowledge while being persecuted by a shadowy cabal, or the corporate branding that frames its customers as savvy rebels fighting against the stale establishment. These are not organic social developments. They are carefully constructed narratives. They trigger a profound psychological response known as identity fusion, where your personal sense of self merges completely with the group. This creates an unconscious compulsion to defend your new tribe at all costs, because any attack on the group is now felt as a personal attack on you. Research in social identity theory has shown for decades that a shared external threat is the single most effective catalyst for creating intense in-group loyalty and automatic unthinking hostility towards anyone outside the circle. The goal is layered. First, it ensures unwavering allegiance. Second, it generates a perpetual source of emotional energy outrage that can be directed at any target. And most importantly, it insulates the group from facts and logic by framing all contradictory evidence as just another weapon used by the enemy. The second strategy is the weaponization of the floating signifier. A floating signifier is a vessel word, a powerful, positive term that has been deliberately emptied of its concrete meaning so it can be filled with any agenda. The manipulators take a word that everyone feels good about, like freedom, community, wellness, or even oneness, and attach it to a product, a policy, or a political movement. Think of how often these words appear in advertising slogans, corporate mission statements, and political campaigns, completely detached from their original definitions. Freedom is used to sell everything from trucks to banking services. Community is the name for your social media feed, a space designed to isolate you in an algorithmic bubble. And oneness, the sacred concept of universal interconnectedness, is hijacked to mean total compliance with this quarter's corporate synergy goals, or unquestioning devotion to our party's platform. This isn't innocent branding. It's semantic infiltration, grounded in a deep knowledge of linguistics and human psychology. It works because it bypasses critical thought, appealing directly to our positive emotional associations with the word itself. The goal here is also multi-layered, makes a controlling agenda seem benevolent and liberating. It creates powerful viral slogans that are easy to repeat, but difficult to analyze. And in its most advanced form, it cops the very language of awakening to deepen the sleep of the population, assuring we ask for our own chains, as long as they are branded with a word we love. Everything we've discussed so far, the historical precedent, the corporate applications, the psychological tactics, is just the tip of the iceberg. These are merely the visible mechanisms for those with eyes to see. But the architecture of weaponized oneness runs much deeper, because it has successfully infiltrated the very foundations of society. The education system, the financial system, and even the healthcare system all operate under this same silent command. Working in concert to create a compliant, homogeneous population. Consider the modern education system. Stated function is to teach our children knowledge and critical thinking, but its hidden function is to produce a standardized citizen. Through curated history textbooks, standardized tests that reward memorization over insight, and a rigid structure of bells and hierarchical authority, the system quietly conditions minds for a life of obedience. This process, known as socialization, serves multiple purposes. It creates a predictable workforce, ensures the transmission of a state-approved cultural narrative, and most importantly, it establishes a baseline consensus reality, shared oneness of thought that makes the population far more susceptible to the manipulations of media and government later in life. Look then at the global financial system. Its surface function is to facilitate commerce. Its hidden function is to impose a single, universal value system on the entire planet: money. Through the mechanisms of consumer debt, credit scores, and international loans, it forces a global oneness of desire and aspiration. Nature, art, community, and human time are all converted into a monetary value, a number on a screen. This financialization creates dependency on banking institutions. It fuels an endless cycle of consumption, and most deeply, it subordinates all other forms of human value to a single, controllable metric, making the rich diversity of the world manageable through the levers of debt and interest. Even our system of medicine and mental health plays a role. Its stated purpose is to heal. Its hidden function is often to define and enforce a very narrow band of normal human consciousness. By medicalizing common human experiences like grief and anxiety, and by pathologizing states of non-ordinary awareness, the system creates a chemical oneness of mood and behavior. This serves the pharmaceutical industry. It provides a powerful tool for social control by labeling nonconformity as illness, and crucially, it suppresses the very states of mind that are most likely to question the fundamental assumptions of the system itself. At every level of this institutional web, there are agents both conscious and unconscious who perpetuate this agenda. There is no place to run, because every pillar of our society has been built to support the same roof. In a wild forest, a tree grows towards the light in a chaotic, unpredictable, and beautiful dance with its environment. It is sovereign. But in a modern industrial orchard, a tree is an instrument of production, and the moment it is a sapling. It is disciplined. Its wild branches are ruthlessly pruned back. It is forced and tied along a trellis, its growth confined to a single flat plane. The tree that conforms, that produces the most uniform fruit for the easiest harvest, is the good tree. But there's an even better kind of tree from the orchard keeper's perspective. It is the old tree, the one that has been pruned for so many seasons that its very structure has been permanently altered. It has internalized the logic of the trellis. It no longer sends out wild shoots with the same vigor. Its own branches have become the cage that restricts its growth. It directs all its energy into the predefined, productive channels. It no longer needs the constant violence of the pruning shears, because it has become its own pruner. That is the ultimate goal of the system of weaponized oneness. It's not just to control a population with external force, but to shape it so profoundly that the population begins to control itself. To create citizens who voluntarily limit their own thoughts, who censor their own words, who pathologize their own nonconformity, and who fiercely police the boundaries of their group's identity. The goal is a world of self-pruning human beings, each one staying in their designated row, all while believing they are making free choices. When the cage is no longer made of iron bars, but of consciousness itself, this situation may seem hopeless. The orchard is all-encompassing. How can any tree grow free? There's one element the architects of control have never been able to fully manipulate or suppress: the irrepressible sovereignty of individual consciousness. There is a part of you that remains wild. You're living in a period of radical transparency, where the very systems designed to control us are making the patterns of that control more visible than ever before. No matter how hard they try to maintain the illusion, the cracks are beginning to show. With each passing day, it becomes harder for the mechanisms of manipulation to remain hidden. People are waking up. They're beginning to recognize the emotional hooks in the media they consume, to question the narratives they are fed, and to feel the deep incongruity between the promise of connection and the reality of division. And the more people who reclaim their awareness, the weaker the entire system of counterfeit oneness becomes. It thrives on unconsciousness. Waking up from this induced trance is the critical first step. But the solution cannot be to fight the system on its own terms. Anyone who has read George Orwell's 1984 knows that open external rebellion against a system that can redefine reality itself is doomed to fail. The system anticipates and absorbs all conventional opposition. The real revolution will not be televised, it will not be fought in the streets, and it will not have a leader or a manifesto, because these would immediately become targets for infiltration and control. The only true revolution must happen in the one place they cannot fully reach: the inner world of your own mind. It is a revolution of awareness. By learning to observe your own emotional reactions without instantly identifying with them, by consciously withdrawing your attention from the outrage machine, by choosing to build authentic community over defending a digital tribe, you are actively starving the system of its fuel. That is how you reclaim your power, not by tearing down the old world, but by quietly and deliberately building a new one within yourself.